Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. At 5 p.m. on the 1st of August 1944, Europe's largest uprising against the German occupiers began. The 79th anniversary of the outbreak of the Warsaw Uprising, as every year, is accompanied by many events with the participation of the President, the Prime Minister, Warsaw residents and the many tourists who come to the Polish capital today to pay tribute to the heroes. Among them was our reporter, Alexander Woyak.
This is an event that had its beginning, but does not have its end. It is ongoing all the time. The Warsaw Uprising is an event in our history that is associated with enormous consequences, which had great significance for history after the war, and still has great significance today. At Warsaw's Powązki Cemetery, President Andrzej Duda paid tribute to Warsaw insurgents at the Gloria Victis Memorial. The 12th Warsaw Uprising Remembrance March, organized by Robert Bąkiewicz, set off from the Roman Dmowski roundabout at the W hour. Not remembering will simply cause us to perish as a nation in this melting pot, such a cosmopolitan global melting pot, and someone else will play completely for these interests here, in this space that is today called Poland. I think that Poles will not forget this, and Poles are attached to their own traditions, to their history, to their own heroes, and all the more so today when this history of ours is under attack, when it is attacked on the one hand by the Russians, on the other hand by the Germans who are trying to whitewash themselves here, and from the role of executioners they want to become victims, and from us they want to make executioners. Incredible things are happening in the world. We have to fight for this. We are also fighting here in Warsaw, at the Warsaw Uprising March. There are only a few insurgents of the Warsaw Uprising left now. If they are gone, we'll forget about our country, our homeland, and the Polish language. My mother was from Warsaw. She lived in Wola and survived the Wola massacre. She was less than 15 years old at the time, and that's why we are here today.
I'm expressing my solidarity with the Polish people, which on this day I think this represents one of the bravest things in human history.
I usually attend as a volunteer on behalf of the Warsaw Uprising Museum, but this year I will not be attending. I hope the weather will be fine though, and that there will be the same atmosphere in Piłsudski Square as always. So you are going to sing the unbanned songs? Of course I am. Even though I'm not from Warsaw, I go to the concert every year. After the ceremonies, at the military's main gate, Gazeta Polska clubs gathered, as they do every year, to honor the memory of the insurgents.
Kiedy się wszystko dla nas skończyło, kiedy ostatni zamilkł pęd.
Alexander Woyak, TV Republika.
79 years ago, about 50,000 Warsaw insurgents put up an uneven fight against a well-armed and well-trained German army. The insurgents counted on help from the nearby Soviet forces, which did not come. The Warsaw Uprising, which was supposed to last only a few days, lasted 63 days. Between 16,000 and 18,000 Home Army soldiers and between 150,000 and 180,000 civilians died in the uprising. After the capitulation on the 2nd of October, Warsaw was completely destroyed by the Germans. The Home Army Command planned to liberate the capital before the Red Army entered, hoping to strengthen the international position of the government of the Republic of Poland in exile and halt Stalin's Sovietization of Poland. I remember how not long ago visitors from abroad looked at me with pity, as if I were a Russophobe, when I said that such events could happen again. Ever since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, today when they look at Mariupol, they understand what I meant then. The initial phase of the uprising, the insurgents were successful. They managed to seize the German military warehouses in Stawki, the main post office, and the fortified concentration camp Gonczówka. One of the greatest successes of the uprising was the capture of the Past building, the building of the Polish Joint Stock Telephone Company on Zielna Street.
Chyba najwięcej było łączniczek I sanitariuszek.
Probably most were women liaison officers and first aid workers, but they also fought. When it was necessary, women grabbed weapons. After all, our brave girls who went to capture Past seized on August the 20th, the greatest victory of the insurgents, and women took part in this action. Women appeared on the barricades, went through the sewers, stayed in the old city when it was evacuated. The severely wounded could not be evacuated, and it was the girls who stayed with these guys and died. In this context, the question of why the Soviets were passive also recurs. The Red Army could have assisted the insurgents, but on Stalin's orders it stopped on the right side of the Vistula River and observed the fighting from a safe position. Stalin perfectly foresaw the situation that happened in Polish-Russian relations. He perfectly predicted the outbreak of the uprising and allowed the uprising to bleed into the fight against the Germans during the uprising. 50,000 insurgents fighting, 10,000 killed, 20,000 wounded, 200,000 killed among civilians, more than 600,000 displaced. The uprising collapsed after 63 days of fierce fighting. On October the 2nd, 1944, 50,000 insurgents took part, of whom 10,000 were killed and more than 20,000 were wounded. As a result of German atrocities, some 200,000 civilians died. After the capitulation of Warsaw, the Germans deported several 100,000 people from Warsaw and its vicinity to the transit camp in Pruszków, to forced labour or to concentration camps. The spirit of the nation has not died in Warsaw. Representatives of various political factions fought on the Pilecki Redoubt, their idea united. A few weeks after the fall of the uprising, the Polish capital was bombed by the Germans and razed to the ground. Around the corner, very close to us, are such traces which we often do not notice on a daily basis. We pass the building where the decision to launch the uprising was made. We pass places where, for example, Spielmann hid during the uprising, where he wanted to commit suicide when the building was on fire. We pass bars with bullet marks in them and facades that were shot through. These are all places that make us think that this history is actually at our fingertips. Poland is demanding that Germany pay reparations for the losses it suffered in World War II. They were estimated at 6,220 billion zloty. As for movable works of art, these are worth more than 19 billion zloty, and the total loss in cultural property is more than 51 billion zloty. So this is, one might say, only a part, even a small part of all the losses we have suffered. The legitimacy of the decision to launch the uprising remains a subject of debate and heated polemics. In 1939, Hitler issued a decision on Warsaw with Himmler, and they repeated it after the outbreak of the Warsaw Uprising, that Warsaw should be razed to the ground. There are two choices for every issue, yes or no. So we had to. What? Either kneel down, fold our hands and ask for mercy. And now a question for you. Would they have shown us mercy or not? The Warsaw Uprising was the largest operation and the culmination of Operation Storm, which had been conducted by the Polish Home Army since January 1944 against German troops. One of the goals of the Polish offensive was to negate the provisions of the Tehran Conference, according to which Poland after the war was to be in the sphere of influence of the Soviet Union. Victory in the uprising was to give Poland a better position in post-war negotiations that would protect Poland from Soviet occupation. The Russian invasion of Ukraine has now been going on for 524 days. The rockets that hit the apartment block in Kryvyi Rih were fired from a nearby town of Jankoy in the occupied Crimea. Ukraine needs long-range weapons to defend its citizens, President Vladimir Zelensky said. The rescue operation at the site of the Russian missile strike in Kryvyi Rih has ended. These were two Iskander ballistic missiles targeted at a residential building. Against civilians, ordinary people, children. Floors 4 through 9 were completely destroyed. This is terrorism, which no one in the world would call anything else. The attack resulted in the death of 6 victims, among them a child, a girl. Her name was Daria. She was only 10 years old. Her mother was killed along with her. Her name was Natalia, an ordinary family in an ordinary city, whose lives were destroyed by Russian murderers. My condolences to all those who lost loved ones. Russian barbarians also shelled Kherson. A policeman was killed. 9 people were wounded, including a child and 4 volunteers from the public association City Force. Despite Russian terror, despite all attempts by Russia to blackmail the world, if everyone in the world who values life unite, we will defeat evil. We can not only defeat the terrorist nation, but also ensure that justice will prevail when all those responsible for terrorism are held accountable. That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.